My name is Ryan Glassdown. I'm the Senior Director for Data Governance and Privacy. So I lead our North America Data Governance and Privacy segment here at Informatica. I've been with Informatica for a little over 4 years now. Prior to joining Informatica, I was a customer of Informatica. So my background is in the practitioner space of standing up and operationalizing both master data management as well as data governance programs. We're going to really kind of focus just on an overview of, how Informatica sees the data governance marketplace. But I want to start off first of, what is data governance and really kind of help to set the table of what that is. But I think it's important that we also focus on what data governance is not, of how we share this with our customers, right? It's not necessarily a technology or a one-time initiative, nor is it an IT project, right? This should really be a business-led initiative within an organization. It's not a compliance activity, and it's not a soloed departmental list of functions and policies that are there, right? We're really trying to make this broader across the actual enterprises within these organizations. Longer definition of what we see data governance is, and I've gone ahead and highlighted the words in orange here that really pop out, right, around collaboration, policies, processes, repeatable, scalable as a part of that. But simplifying, what this is, it's really around putting together a program that allows organizations to be able to define, discover, collaborate, protect, and trust data to drive business value. And those last two words here are really critical when we're talking and thinking around data governance, and making it sticky within organizations is attaching things that are actually going to be key business drivers within those different organizations. And here's a quote from Gartner that's focused around changing the mindset on data sharing. I'm not going to go ahead and read this whole quote here out loud, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it up for you to read and kind of absorb. But I'll just kind of focus on two key areas that really jump out at me. And, this is around data sharing as a business necessity, as well as deliver business benefit. And so we just talked on the last slide around, delivering business value. But Gartner's also focus on this as well. And this is really important because if you have a data initiative that's not going to be aligned to your business strategy or is not delivering business value, then it's going to be slow to gain adoption. And then that value of the initiative is really going to go ahead and fade away over time. So this is really where we want our customers to focus, because we want them to be successful within their data governance practice and the implementation around this. Here's some eye-opening stats as well that chief data officers have shared with us in a recent IDC survey. And you can see on here that half are trying to make data access and consumption easier in their organization, and compliance continues to really stay top of mind. And it's a challenge when you're focused on getting data to the people that need it within the organization. And anyone that's embarked on this journey, the faster you can get to a self-service in a safe and convenient way, the faster that you can be able to begin to achieve results in your organization. And you can see 51% of CDOs acknowledged that managing data complexity is a real challenge. But then on the other side, not shockingly, only 39% have figured out a standardized data sharing practice within their organization. So, as I'm talking to our partners as we're going through this, you can see just the white space that's here. Of 61% of customers really have an opportunity to go ahead and help standardize this sharing practice that is really also going to be led from a governance initiative. But the environments are also changing, and cloud is compounding the effect that we have in there, right? There's limited management of the different cloud stores that's out there within the market. And so that focus of being able to help support that movement, understanding the data quality, being able to catalog the governance capabilities that need to come with that, and also the understanding and supporting the data privacy aspects of this. On top of that, what we're also focused on, and what I believe you're learning over the next couple of days, is how do you also govern AI and machine learning models? how do organizations begin to know how those models are being used and what data is actually being used, and also being able to apply some business context to those models? And we're seeing a significant uptick within organizations that are focused on this, or when we talk to them about this, they really lean in to that part of the conversation. And then lastly, and this is just a challenge I think that's been out there from before the cloud days, but again, it's really compounding that effect of the absence of the common understanding of data and its usage across the organization, right? You have organizations that find it very difficult to locate that data, understanding what it actually means. How can they be quick to pivot as the markets are just changing in such a rapid way these days? So on top of how we're seeing cloud having a significant influence to the need for governance with organizations, the role of the chief data officer has also changed dramatically over the last couple of years. When I think back on, when these roles were really coming into be, they were very siloed and focused around things such as risk and compliance management. But tying things back to the business value that we've talked about, right? The roles are now very much aligned into those different business goals and those different business objectives within the organization. And how are you tying those objectives to the business goals and being able to support that? And you can see in here on a quote from MIT Sloan is hitting hard again on that data sharing practice, both internally as well as beyond those companies' borders or externally within the organizations, for the ability to really be able to innovate and make those key strategic decisions. But in order to do that, you have to be able to have an understanding of where your data is, who's using it, trusting the data quality of it, and having an easy place for people within the organization to do their roles. So we're seeing the CDO really having a significant influence on that, as well as also where we're seeing the CDOs sitting within the organizations, not necessarily always aligned into the IT part of an organizations or the more technical personas in the organizations. And this is partially because becoming a data-driven organization has begun to really stall out. Again, going back to how the cloud has had an impact around that, with only 24% would rate their organization as data-driven. So again, another focus that we can collectively come to the table to help to solve these different challenges that our customers are facing in order to help them become better data-driven, making better data-driven decisions. And this is down from back in early 2020. We've seen organizations really they've stalled out in this, and partially because data sharing aspects were not necessarily in place. Budgets were impacted by this. And so this has had a pretty big impact of dropping that down those 14 points. And then we see only 32% of those companies are being able to realize the tangible and measurable value of that data. So another very interesting statistic that's come from Harvard Business Review as well as through Accenture. So this is what we're going to talk about next. Really sound familiar of what you're hearing from your customer base. Is this problem is really starting to accelerate. 90% of enterprises expect cloud usage to exceed prior plans due to COVID-19 or from the pandemic. And most organizations are going to want to put a mechanism in place to help to accelerate their shift into being more of a cloud-centric digital infrastructure and providing those different application services twice as fast as they needed to prior to the pandemic, and 20 times faster to leverage advanced technologies and business decision-making than what was originally thought possible due to the pandemic. So it's really brought a lot of acceleration, cloud focus to light as we've gone through the last 2 years. And then again, 67% of companies have been able to accelerate through the automation and also leveraging artificial intelligence as a part of this. So that ties back to the AI and the machine learning governance model, being able to really understand how that's being used to help to support that acceleration. Without having governance in place, the issue really begins to continue to become worse. 80% fail without modern data and analytics governance that's in place. 55% say that AI is accelerated as a part of that. And then lastly, 60% of AI data will be synthetically generated. So who is going to actually be governing that data and the curation? And something that we're also beginning to see lately within these AI models is, how does this begin to impact the bias that the models are also generating? And a challenge with governance is, unfortunately, the term data governance in a lot of organizations can often have a bit of a black eye. They've made several attempts before to run up the hill, and then that's really gone ahead and faded away with other competing priorities or lack of overall adoption that's there. So we need to be able to change the mindset around that, moving this view governance from just risk and compliance towards value creation, and being able to see it from a one-size-fits-all type solution for organizations to something is more of the right size for each of those different use cases that are out there. And then moving from a provision-centric to a consumption-centric. So really thinking about data sharing as a part of that. And then thinking about moving from data governance to data intelligence of what we're really thinking through this, to modernize the value that these teams can bring to the organization and the tools that are there in order to help them really move towards more of that cloud-centric data intelligence and those use cases that support that. The thing is, when we look at these organizations, the data and the knowledge already exists within there. What we're trying to do as a part of this is we're connecting that and the people to the context and really trying to put more of a formalized process in place supporting that, right? It's not creating new governance processes, but it's putting governance into the already existing processes that are there, and essentially having a platform to be able to turn on these different personas within the organizations to be able to help to support this. So what do we at Informatica see as some of the different key drivers and challenges, and how do we look at some of this framework that's out there in the market? So what's driving data governance now in 2022? And we've got this kind of broken down into 4 overall buckets. And I always love to present the slide when I'm talking to customers and just kind of saying, if you were to take a look at these, what are your top priorities? And they almost always come back and say all of them are. Well, how do you begin to prioritize what you should be, focusing on in order to keep heading towards that North Star that you've set forth as part of your overall governance program? And so these 4 categories are really around insights and analytics, supporting the regulations, be them, domestic level, or are those also going to be more industry specific type regulations, supporting those business enablement activities that are in there, as well as the digital transformation, significantly focused around that cloud migration, cloud data lakes, things along those lines. Data-driven decisions really kind of occur on a daily basis. Scenarios like the one on the slide are happening across organizations essentially every day. And this is because people need to be able to turn to their data to help to make these different decisions. And so we're seeing this happen at both the micro as well as the macro level across organizations. And I'm just going to go ahead and click into, just as we're talking about organizations, here's some industry examples, what folks might be looking for as it comes to high level use cases. Now, I think what we want to make sure that we focus on with our customers is, how do we unpack these use cases more so we have a better place to be able to start by being able to support that. And this is an example of how one of our customers were able to sell the value data governance, because they position this more from just a capability perspective and trying to say we need to be able to understand and govern data just for the sake of it. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide, it's really focused around the different business goals of what they're trying to achieve. This was a 100-plus-year-old company that had a big pivot to go ahead and make, especially as they were shifting from a product to a more of a customer-centric organization. And how do they begin to accelerate and make better business decisions as far as that. But they outline the different challenges that are there within the data landscape that is connecting back, that's not allowing them to achieve these different business goals. And this really helped to sell that value across all levels. So it kind of tells that what's in it for me story that we see is really critical to allowing customers to begin to or continue to move forward on their journey, because there's a lot of continued selling that our clients have to do to justify the investment within a governance program. What I also like that they did is they took some of these different use cases, and instead of just calling it a use case, they went and kind of broke these down. And I think you can look at this from almost any single industry that's out there, of the different types of challenges that are created by poor data. So high level use cases, but they did something else, and they really kind of double clicked into, well, what are the root causes? We know that these are the use cases we need to solve for, but what's actually causing these? And so they were able to kind of break these down into 6 overall buckets that were there that all tie into these different use cases above. So what it allows them to do is go into these more root causes, help to solve for those, and then that also organically begins to solve for some of these buckets above. And here's just some examples of different use cases that we're starting to put together, and we look at it from the first use case of data sharing, right? And here are some of the different processes that customers might be looking to support, the different capabilities in which they're looking for from the technology to be able to help to automate those different processes to make better decisions, and the benefits in which they're trying to get from these. So these are now slides that we've started to use with our customers to help to sell the value of data governance program internally within their organization to help them continue to get that traction going. Another one that we focus on from kind of a data lineage aspect that might be there. And then lastly, that shift from on-prem to the cloud, so that supporting that data warehouse migration perspective on there. So being able to map, understand what data should we be moving? Are we moving quality data to it? And then can I trust the data that is also moving to the cloud? So how do you prioritize these different use cases, right? Because there's a lot of different places of where you can start as a part of that. And we like to work with our customers on trying to leverage a use case heat map for that. Trying to put together different scores in there so you can go ahead and rank that. So we talked earlier around, there's all of these different use cases that are out there. How do I actually get started? Well, let's go through an exercise of being able to rank those use cases so we can be able to prioritize those, and where we see the most value for our customers having high adoption from a governance perspective. When you think about breaking this heat map into a quadrant, and you have your low investment on the far right side and your business value on the left side as it goes up. So being able to get really in that upper right-hand quadrant of this is where we see organizations having the most amount of success. High business value, low investment that's in there, being able to unpack those use cases, create those repeatable processes, turning on those individuals that are already doing this and helping to formalize that process for that. You can also stay focused on the high value, high investment, as well as the low value, low investment in order to go ahead and get started. But where it's imperative to stay away from are those low business value, high investment in order to support that. So, to me, I'm really seeing those as, these big bang approaches that are out there that just continue to go on for months and months and months, and not realizing an ROI on both leveraging the technology to help with that, as well as your human capital being able to support these. So this is an example of what we see as framework for this. And again, it's carrying that theme of strategic business drivers through that, because you want those drivers that are there to be supported by your overall governance outcomes that are there. And that needs to be driven by the people within the organization. And we want to be able to empower those people through those different processes. So again, not putting new processes necessarily in place, creating, this, red tape and bureaucracy kind of around that, but embedding those governance processes into the existing ones, and then allowing that technology to be able to sit there and help to support that from overall integrations and automations to help to speed up and make those better sound business decisions, supporting those governance processes. So this is an example of, again, one of our customers, of what their governance journey really looked like. And they use this from a standpoint of, let's have data governance set the foundation for our data management journey within the organization, because they saw that it's not going to provide them a lot of value to try to execute on the things that are on the 4 and 5 year plan out if they can't have an understanding what data they have in the organization, what does it mean to the organization, how can we trust that? How can we make decisions off of that? And then building on that as they begin to go forward into really kind of that optimal state. And you can see where that optimal state with them on here was really getting into more of some master data management capabilities and functionalities. But if you look at the measures that run across here, the same themes that we've been talking about for the last 25 minutes in here are really around strong business outcomes, trusting the data, ensuring that you've got that overall support for that. So I'm going to leave this team with a quote, and this comes from Jitesh Ghai, who's our Chief Product Officer here at Informatica. And I really like this quote because it speaks to, how quickly things become obsolete within organizations, especially with just this massive digital transformation that we're all going through. And that is, governance without implementation is just documentation, and documentation is instantly obsolete. So it does no good nowadays for organizations to sit down in a room and whiteboard out all of the different systems and how things are linked to one another, or putting that into a Visio diagram, from an architecture perspective, and calling that good, because things are changing at such a rapid rate. Along with that, not being able to implement business context to that data, having a place of where that really continues to live and breathe within that quickly becomes obsolete. Just a couple of critical resources that are out there for our partner community to be able to support. One is a great place to also point customers to, but as well as also learning to get better ideas for the different use cases in which Informatica supports when it comes to a governance and privacy perspective. And this is our Data Empowerment Expert Series. So every month, our product marketing team works with one of our customers to talk about what their journey looked like and the different challenges that they had, the use cases that they had, and how do they overcome those to be successful in their governance journey. The other area I would suggest looking at is our Data Governance and Privacy Foundation certificate. So I'm not sure if Jags is going to provide more information around this, but this is just somewhere you can go in. We have 3 different sessions. It's an on-demand learning that you can go through, but then after you complete that, you get registered as a foundation level member and receive this overall certificate that's there.